I stood in the kitchen, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound that filled the silence. Tears streaked down my face, hot and relentless as I tried to hold it together. My hands trembled as I wiped my eyes, but the weight of everything felt too much. Just then, I felt a presence behind me. A hand, warm and comforting, gently touched my shoulder. I froze. His touch, so familiar yet foreign in this moment, sent a wave of emotions crashing through me. I should have pulled away. I should have stepped back. But I did not. I let him stay. I had never imagined that this would be how I'd find myself, standing alone in a kitchen, the smell of something half-cooked lingering in the air, the weight of everything in my life threatening to collapse on me. The last few weeks had felt like a storm that I could not weather, and no matter how hard I tried to put on a brave face, everything had come crashing down. I thought I had dealt with my feelings, tucked them neatly away like old, forgotten books on a shelf. But they had a way of resurfacing when I least expected it. And today it had all poured out of me. I had been cooking dinner, something simple that didn't require much thought, but even the act of slicing vegetables felt like an impossible task. My hands had moved mechanically, not really registering what they were doing. I'd been lost in my thoughts, thinking about everything that had changed, everything I had lost, and everything I had hoped for but would never have. I'd been married for over 20 years before it fell apart. The loss of that, the betrayal, the constant questioning of what I could have done differently, it had weighed on me heavily. And then there was him, the man who had somehow walked into my life in the most unexpected way. He was not supposed to be a part of it. We were just friends, just casual acquaintances who saw each other occasionally at family gatherings. He was married, and I was in the middle of navigating my own messy, broken heart. I had no room for anyone else. Certainly not someone like him. Someone who made me feel things I didn't know I was capable of feeling anymore. I remember the first time I truly noticed him. It had been at my sister's birthday party, a casual get-together, where everyone was too wrapped up in their own lives to notice the small moments. But I had. He had sat across from me, looking so calm and collected, as if the world around him was something he had learned to control. His smile, though soft, had an intensity to it that pulled at something deep within me. It was not just the way he looked at me, but how he really listened. It was something I had not experienced in a long time, and it unsettled me. Over the next few months, we'd run into each other more often. Small talk here and there, but there was always an undercurrent of something deeper, something I could not put my finger on. He was someone who knew how to talk to me without making me feel like I had to be anyone else. He had a way of making me feel seen. And I, in turn, had started to feel drawn to him in ways I had never expected. But I had resisted. There were boundaries, lines that should not be crossed. He was married and I was still reeling from my own divorce. There was no room for confusion, no room for complications. But when he came over to check on me a few days ago, after I had been through a particularly difficult morning, I had felt the shift in the air. His voice, calm and understanding, had cut through my thoughts like a warm breeze on a chilly day. He wasn't the first time in a long while I felt like someone cared. It was so subtle, so gentle that it almost felt like I was imagining it. I hadn't planned on seeing him today. I had been so focused on pushing through the chaos of my own mind, trying to cook and keep myself together. But then I heard the knock at the door. I had expected it to be the delivery guy with the groceries I had ordered. But when I opened the door, there he stood, his smile warm, his eyes sincere. He had come to check on me again, just to see how I was doing. He hadn't said much, but his presence had spoken volumes. I felt the old familiar tug of desire, the kind that told me I needed to step back, but I could not. Not today. Not after everything I had been through. And so I let him in. He'd walked into the kitchen with me, his eyes scanning the room as though he could read the storm swirling inside me. But he didn't press. He simply asked if I was okay. I lied. I told him I was fine. It was easier that way. I didn't want to burden him with my pain, but there was no denying the connection, the understanding in the way he looked at me, the way he let me be without demanding anything in return. We started talking about trivial things, but I could feel the weight of my emotions building up. I could feel my composure slipping, the tears threatening to spill out, even though I had sworn to myself I would not cry in front of him. I had always been the strong one, the one who kept everything together. But in that moment I was so tired. Tired of being strong. Tired of carrying everything alone. And then as I stood there trying to keep it together, the tears started to fall. The dam I had carefully built up began to crack. He must have seen it in my eyes before I even realized it, because he took a step closer to me. His hand moved tentatively to my shoulder, a touch so light I almost couldn't feel it. But it was enough. It was all I needed. I could feel his warmth, his presence, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I did not feel so alone. I did not pull away. I should have. I should have stepped back, reminded myself of the lines I had drawn, the boundaries I had sworn to never cross. But in that moment, all I could think about was how much I needed to feel something other than the weight of my pain. I needed to feel understood. I needed to feel seen. And for reasons I could not explain, I did not pull away. His hand stayed there, and it was as if the world paused for a moment. The noise, the chaos, the self-doubt, it all faded away, replaced by the warmth of his touch. I had never expected something so simple, so small to have such an impact on me. But it did. It reached inside me and touched a part of me that I thought I had lost forever. I did not pull away. And that decision, so small, so simple, was the moment everything changed. The seconds dragged on, each one stretching into an eternity. And I found myself caught between two worlds, one filled with the remnants of my past, the other now shaped by the quiet intensity of this moment. His hand remained on my shoulder, but it felt like more than just a physical touch. It was a connection, an understanding that went beyond words, beyond any explanation I could offer. It was something I had not realized I had been missing, something I didn't know I needed until it was there right in front of me. My chest tightened as the tears kept coming, the floodgates of grief and loneliness opening wider than I thought was possible. It wasn't just about my failed marriage or the heartache I'd buried under years of pretending everything was fine. It was about the life I had once had, the future I had envisioned, and how it had all slipped away in ways I never anticipated. For so long I had carried the weight of that loss on my own, trying to be strong, trying to be the person everyone else expected me to be. But now, standing there in that kitchen with him, everything felt different. The tears that fell weren't just from sadness. They were also from relief, from the release of everything I had kept buried for so long. He didn't say anything at first, and I was grateful for that. Words felt so inadequate in a moment like this, and yet his silence was louder than any reassurance he could have offered. It spoke to me in ways that his voice never could. It told me he understood, that he wasn't afraid of my vulnerability, that he was not going to shy away from me when I let myself fall apart. It was a rare thing, this quiet, this calm. Most people would have stepped back, would have told me to pull myself together, but not him. He stood there, his presence steady and unwavering, letting me be. For the first time in so long, I allowed myself to lean into it, to lean into him. The tension in my shoulders began to loosen. But it was more than just physical release. There was a mental shift, an internal surrender. I did not pull away. Even though every part of me told me that I should, I didn't pull away, because in that moment, I felt like I was no longer alone. He was there, his touch gentle but firm, as though he was holding me together without ever saying a word. I let the tears come, and I let them fall freely, unafraid of how they might make me look. The years of holding it in, the anger, the hurt, the confusion, all of it tumbled out in a rush. I was no longer the woman who had it all figured out, who kept up appearances. I was just me, stripped down to the rawness of what I had been feeling. And in that vulnerability, I felt something shift inside me. A shift that I didn't know I needed, but was desperate for all the same. It wasn't just the grief that I had to deal with. It was the emptiness that had taken root after my marriage fell apart, the uncertainty that had kept me awake at night, wondering if I would ever find my place in the world again. And now here he was, this man who had shown up unexpectedly, his touch gentle yet firm, standing there with me in this moment of weakness. He wasn't asking for anything. He wasn't trying to fix me. He was just there. And that made all the difference. The kitchen felt quieter somehow. The hum of the refrigerator, the soft ticking of the clock, the sounds of the world outside all faded away as I became aware only of the steady rhythm of my breathing. And his hands still resting on my shoulder. He had stepped into my world without hesitation, without judgment. It was a kindness I didn't expect, and yet it felt like the only thing that made sense in that moment. He moved slightly, just enough to turn me toward him, and I felt the warmth of his body close to mine. His hand slid from my shoulder to the small of my back, pulling me into his chest in a way that was both reassuring and tender. I could hear his heartbeat steady and calm, as if his very presence was offering me the stability I had craved for so long. I was overwhelmed by how safe it felt, how easy it was to simply let go of everything I had been holding inside. "I'm here," he whispered, his voice barely above a breath, but it felt like a promise. I did not pull away. The words echoed in my mind, a simple yet powerful statement that made me realize something I had not been willing to admit before. I needed this. I needed him. Not in a way that felt desperate or needy, but in a way that acknowledged the humanity in both of us. I had been so used to being the one who took care of everything, who kept others' needs above my own. But now in his arms, I realized that it was okay to be vulnerable. It was okay to let someone else be there for me. His fingers traced the curve of my back, and I felt a shiver run through me. I could not explain why, but it wasn't just the physical touch that affected me. It was the way he was attuned to me, how he was reading my emotions without me needing to say anything. It was the way he made me feel seen in a way I had long forgotten. "I did not mean to make you cry," he said, his voice thick with regret. But I could hear the sincerity in his tone. "You didn't," I replied, lifting my head to meet his gaze. "I needed this. I needed you." The words surprised me even as they left my lips. I hadn't realized how much I had been holding back, how much I had needed someone to remind me that I was still worthy of care, of tenderness. His hand gently cupped my face, his thumb brushing the tears that still clung to my cheeks. And for a moment, everything seemed to stop. The world, my pain, the confusion, all of it disappeared in the warmth of his gaze. It wasn't about the past anymore. It wasn't about what I had lost. It was about the here and now, about the connection we had in this moment, something that felt more real than anything I had felt in a long time. He leaned in slowly, his breath warm against my skin, and as his lips met mine, it was not like the kisses I had known before. It was not rushed, not born from some fleeting desire. It was slow, deliberate, a silent communication of everything we had both been through. And I did not pull away. I let myself feel every second of it, every inch of the space between us closing as we gave into the unspoken pull that had been building for so long. In that kiss, I found everything I had been searching for. It wasn't just passion or desire. It was something deeper, something more profound, a sense of being truly understood, truly cared for. And in that moment, I realized that it was not about finding someone to fix me. It was about finding someone who would see me, all of me, the broken parts, the healing parts, and everything in between, and still choose to stay. I did not pull away, and as we stood there wrapped in the quiet intimacy of that moment, I knew that everything had changed. The minutes stretched out as I stood there in his arms, the warmth of his body contrasting sharply with the cold that had settled in my bones. His touch was gentle, but it stirred something in me, a mix of confusion, desire, and something deeper I could not yet name. For a brief moment, I let myself sink into it, letting the sensation of his closeness fill the empty space inside me. But then, like a sudden gust of wind, doubt crept in, and I pulled back slightly, just enough to create distance between us. His gaze softened, and I could feel the weight of his eyes on me, searching, waiting for me to say something. But I could not find the words. The confusion was overwhelming, like a fog that clouded my thoughts, leaving me unsure of everything. I had not expected this. I had not expected to feel this pull, this magnetism that seemed to draw me toward him despite my better judgment. For so long I had prided myself on being independent, on being in control of my emotions, my reactions. And now in the face of something real, something raw, I felt like I was losing my grip. "I did not mean to make things complicated," he said softly, breaking the silence that had settled between us. The sincerity in his voice made my heart ache. But it also made me question everything. Did I want this? Did I want to open myself up to the possibility of something more? Something that could shatter the fragile peace I had built for myself. The words I wanted to say were caught in my throat, tangled in the mess of emotions that were swirling inside me. Part of me wanted to pull away, to shut everything down and walk away before I allowed myself to fall any further into this vulnerable space. But another part of me, the part that had been silent for so long, was reaching out, aching for connection, for something more than the numb existence I had been living since everything fell apart. I took a step back, breaking free from his hold completely, and the cold air between us seemed to deepen. He did not move to follow, and I could feel the tension crackle in the space between us like a storm waiting to break. My chest tightened, my breathing shallow as I fought to keep my emotions in check. But it was impossible. The walls I had so carefully built around myself were crumbling piece by piece under the weight of what was happening. Maybe we should just forget this happened, I said, my voice barely a whisper. The words felt wrong as soon as they left my lips, but they were the only thing I could think to say in the moment. They were a defense mechanism, a way to protect myself from what I was afraid was happening. I did not want to be vulnerable. I did not want to let someone in again. Not after everything I had been through. Not after the heartache, the betrayal. He stepped closer, his eyes never leaving mine, and I felt his presence like a tangible force pressing against me. He was not going to let me push him away that easily. He reached out slowly, cautiously, as though afraid that any sudden movement might send me running. But I did not move. I stood there rooted to the spot, my heart racing as the tension between us built. "You cannot just forget this," he said quietly, his voice low and steady. "This is not something you can push aside. Not after everything we've just shared." I opened my mouth to protest, to tell him that I could and I would, but no words came out. The truth was he was right. I could not just forget this no matter how much I wanted to. The connection between us was undeniable and it was terrifying. It felt like a pull that I could not control, something deeper than mere attraction. It was as if he had unlocked something inside me, something I had buried so deep that I had convinced myself it did not exist anymore. I took a shaky breath, my mind spinning with conflicting emotions. Part of me wanted to run to put distance between us before things got too complicated. But another part of me, the part that had been starving for real connection for so long, wanted to stay. It wanted to give in to this feeling, to let it take over and see where it led. But I was afraid. I was afraid of what might happen if I let go of my control, if I allowed myself to truly feel again. "What is it that you want from me?" I asked, my voice trembling. The question was honest, raw, and I felt exposed asking it. But I had to know. I needed to understand why he was here, why he was standing in front of me, offering something that felt so much like hope, but also like a dangerous promise. He hesitated for a moment, his gaze flickering with uncertainty before he finally spoke. "I want nothing from you," he said, his words clear and measured. "I am not asking for anything. I am simply here and I'm not going anywhere unless you want me to. But I'm not going to pretend that what's happening between us is just a passing thing. It's real whether you want to admit it or not." His words settled in the air between us, heavy and undeniable. It was like a confession, but it was also a challenge. He was not asking for my permission, but he was giving me the space to make my own choice. And the choice I faced was not just about him. It was about me. It was about whether or not I was ready to let go of my fear, my insecurities, and embrace the possibility of something more. The room seemed to close in on me, the silence thick with the weight of my thoughts. I could hear my own heartbeat, the rushing sound of blood in my ears as I grappled with what I was feeling. I wanted to reach out to bridge the distance between us, but I was frozen. The tension was suffocating, the space between us pulsing with the unspoken words we both knew were lingering in the air. Finally, I spoke, my voice barely above a whisper. "I cannot do this. I cannot let myself feel this way again." But as soon as the words left my mouth, I knew they were not true. They were just a shield, a way to protect myself from what I was afraid of. And in that moment, I understood something. I understood that this fear, this hesitation was exactly what had kept me from truly living for so long. The fear of loss, the fear of vulnerability, the fear of letting someone in. It had kept me locked in a cage of my own making. And now standing here with him, I realized that the only way to truly heal was to face that fear head-on. But the question remained, was I ready? Could I let go of the past and take a chance on something new, something that scared me more than I was willing to admit? The tension between us was thick enough to cut with a knife. My heart was pounding, my hands trembling as I tried to make sense of everything. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to trust that what he was offering was real, but I had been hurt before. I had trusted someone before only to have it ripped away in an instant. The thought of going through that pain again was almost unbearable. But still, I could not ignore the pull, the magnetic force that seemed to draw me to him. I took a deep breath and looked him in the eyes. The answer, I realized, was not something I could find in my head. It was something I had to feel in my heart. The silence between us lingered, but this time it felt different, less heavy, more like a space for possibility. I took a deep breath, my heart still racing, but the tension that had once threatened to overwhelm me now felt more manageable. In the stillness, I finally made a decision. Not just for him, not just for us, but for myself. I did not think I was ready, I whispered, my voice shaking but firm. But maybe I am. His eyes softened, a quiet understanding passing between us. He stepped closer, and this time I did not pull away. His hand found mine, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I allowed myself to feel something real, something that was not clouded by doubt or fear. It was terrifying, but it was also freeing. We stood there for a while in the quiet of the kitchen, the weight of the past slowly lifting with every beat of my heart. I had not expected to find this connection. But in that moment, I realized that sometimes the most unexpected things could lead to healing. His touch was no longer just a comfort. It was a promise. And as I looked into his eyes, I understood that this was the beginning of something new, something raw, something real. And maybe, just maybe, it was exactly what I needed. The first step toward letting go of the past and embracing the possibility of love again. We did not need to say anything more. Everything had already been said.